Welcome back to Words of the Wise. I am really looking forward to today's episode. I have Chief McEachin from Atwater PD in California, 21 years experience in law enforcement. Really great guy to talk to about wellness. So, really excited about it. Welcome to the show, Chief McEachin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, we were just having a grand old time before clicking record, laughing, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I was hoping we could rewind 21 years. How did you get into law enforcement and what did your career look like?
So I was in the restaurant business. I started in the restaurant business when I was in high school just to have a job and worked my way up to a district manager. And so I stayed there for almost 20 years and I really enjoyed what I was doing. But I got to a point where I thought, okay, I can't do this forever. There was no retirement. I didn't want to look back when I was in my 50s or 60s and say, what am I going to do now? I don't have any retirement set up. So my father was a police officer most of my life. And as a kid, that's all I wanted to do. My grandmother had a little uniform made for me, and I would walk around with my little toy gun, and that's what I wanted to do. So I decided, you know what, it's not too late to do that. You're still in good enough shape. You can pass the academy and do all that. So let's look into that. It was kind of during the early part of the recession, and so a lot of agencies weren't hiring. So I wound up having to send myself through the academy. But a lot of agencies, because of the recession, were coming to the academy and recruiting as we were getting close to finishing. So I was able to get a job right after I got out of the academy, and I've been doing this ever since.
I love that mentality of it's not too late to follow your dreams. And I think so often we do kind of get in our heads about that, where you feel kind of stuck in your current life positioning. And I love that mentality of looking around and saying, hey, like maybe this isn't my dream. This isn't what I wanted to do, and it's not too late. And I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna, even if I have to put myself through it, like I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it. I really like that a lot. I know when we talked, wellness is something that's really a priority to you, and I'm curious to know why.
Well, I like to really talk with my staff and get to know them and get to know what their priorities are in life and what they have going on, family or whatever. And it's always hard to see that person that's struggling or that doesn't really want to talk much, or you can just tell that they're going down a path with no help. And it's really hard to watch that happen. And I know if I was going through that, there's times when you just want to be left alone. You don't want to talk about it, but there's times where you do. And it really does help to have somebody there that you can talk to. And so I think it's really important. A lot of people wouldn't want to come and talk to the boss because, they feel vulnerable or whatever. So it's important that they can lean on each other as well. And so I like to foster that kind of atmosphere at work that, if you want to talk to me, my door's always open. Even if I'm in the middle of something, if somebody comes and knocks on my door, I always stop what I'm doing and open the door, unless I'm on a podcast with Paige Arnone, then I'm not. So
Lock
I
the door.
yeah, I try to be available to them. And, sometimes it's about things that they have going on in their life. Sometimes it's just about work, but I think it's important just to be available in case they really do want to talk to you.
Did you have times throughout your career where you were struggling and you felt like you didn't have that support and people didn't look out for you when you felt like you needed it?
I'm very fortunate that I have a really great family. And so like when I was going through a divorce, it was tough. But I was a single father of two kids. So I had something to keep me busy when I wasn't working. Great support with my mother and my other family, my cousins and aunts and uncles and things. So it really helped me to have that. So I never felt alone. I never felt like there was no one to talk to because my mom to this day, I can pick up the phone. If I'm having a rough day, I could call her and talk to her. And it always makes me feel better. So I think it's good to have that, but not everybody has that. So the people that do feel alone or don't feel connected to their family, I think they need to have somebody to have that as an outlet.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point to bring up. And, we talked a little bit about this about, you know, cops tend to hang out with cops and they don't really have a lot of friendships or community outside of the career. How important do you think that is to have that separation and have a community outside of policing?
I think it's huge. I've known people that like to me, my career as a police officer, there are people who they are a police officer and that's their whole being, and they don't know what to do when they're not working. So I think that's a lot of the reason why some people tend to only hang out with police officers because they feel like no one else can relate to them or understand them. And I think it's important to have that separation because otherwise it's almost like you're never off work. And I really don't like to talk about work when I'm not at work. I talk to my girlfriend every day on the way home. I talk to her about my day and how everything went, so that by the time I get home, I've already done it and we could just enjoy our evening. But as far as the people you hang out with, when I meet new people, they'll always ask me, what's the most scariest thing you've ever seen or the craziest thing? I just don't like talking about that stuff. And I don't know why, but when I'm off work, I'm off work. And so I think the people that don't have that separation, it's really not healthy. And I think if you have family, you need to devote your time to your family when you're not at work. And I think it's gotten better. Like I know when I was growing up, all of my dad's friends were police officers. We'd have parties at the house and everybody that was there worked together. I think for that time it was okay, but now I don't think it's quite the same anymore. I mean, I know that some of my people still hang out together sometimes. They'll go fishing or golfing or whatever, but I don't think that that's the only people they spend time with. And so I think this new generation sees things a lot differently, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think that what you said is important. I don't think it has to be all or nothing. I think that it sounds to me like it could be a positive thing to have peers that you can relate to, that you spend time with outside of the job, but do you also have other people who are not that, and how can you have a balance or a mix of the two? One of the questions that popped up in my head is, for those who don't have a community outside of the job and only hang out with law enforcement, do you think that that sort of social isolation impacts mental health? Do you think that, talking about the job all the time can have a negative impact on mental health?
Absolutely, because we see and are involved in a lot of bad things. And if that's all you consume yourself with, then you're going to be like, I mean, they talk about the alert levels and, people that are always at orange, and that's not healthy. You can't always be on alert. And I know when I'm out eating in a restaurant, I'm constantly, and I'll catch myself doing it. I'm looking out the window and I see everyone that's walking by. And so I do like to be at home because I know in my home that no one's walking by and there's nothing bad is about to happen. And so it is nice to have that. And so I think it's ingrained in us, just part of what we are. I always sit with my eyes to the door. And my mom knows that when we go into a restaurant, she'll say, I know you want that side, so I'll sit over here. So it does happen instinctively, whether you want it to or not. But there's got to be that time when you're not at orange alert. And there's got to be that time where you can decompress and know that you don't have to be waiting for something to happen. And I think if you don't disengage from work, you have to stay on that alert because that's how we're trained. And it's just not good for your body or your mind.
Yeah. I also think it's really nice to have different perspectives on things. And I think that the best advice and the best perspectives I've had have been from people totally on the outside of what I'm doing, and if I have people who are really, really close to me and they understand the ins and outs of like what I have going on, we all kind of like think the same, we talk the same, we do the same things. And to have someone on the outside to sometimes call me out on things or to offer maybe a different thought process that I didn't think about or just give a different perspective, I think is there's there's growth in that, and when you have the ability to have other people, and it's not always good, like people are always going to come in and give their 2 cents on something and you're like, like I don't need that. But every once in a while, when you have friends and networks outside of your immediate day to day, I think it just gives you an opportunity to maybe think a little bit differently, have a different perspective. Maybe have someone tell you like, hey, you're acting really negatively right now. Or your thought process, like everything you say is negative. And maybe you don't realize that because your direct network is also speaking in that way. And so you like perpetuate that with each other. And so I think it's nice to have like a breath of fresh air that's not so close.
Definitely. We bought a house on a golf course and we just had a pool and a hot tub built in this last year, and we'll sit out in the hot tub and across from us, there's a little stream that runs behind our house, and then there's the golf course back there, and palm trees everywhere, and there's so much beauty out there. And we'll be sitting there, and there's a on the maintenance shack they had a tractor was someone tried to steal it, so they put these big floodlights to keep their area lit up. Well, now that floodlight works its way into my backyard, and it irritates me. So I'll sit there and complain about that, and complain about the geese crapping all over the place, and my girlfriend will look at me and say, you make this not even enjoyable. We came out here to relax, and all you're doing is pointing out all the negative things and complaining. And I thought, she's right. And so I have stopped doing that. I tried to just go out there and enjoy the what is out there and the beauty of the nature, what brought us there in the first place. So you're absolutely right. You need someone to call you out on that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I know that organizationally you've been really involved in creating a culture of wellness. And you mentioned to me, and I really liked this statement where you said, it's not about you, it's about them. And really trying to create resources and spaces and programming that caters to the specific needs and goals of your team. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done and how you are gauging the interests and needs of your department?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, the state gave every law enforcement agency in California a wellness grant,
Mhm.
and the amount you received was dependent upon the size of your department. But I thought that was really great because when we look at our budgets, there are things that you have to have. You have to have safety equipment. You have to have, vehicles. You have to have those things, and they obviously take priority. And then when there's crumbs left, you try to figure out where to allocate those. So it was nice that they gave us some money that was only allowed to be spent on wellness type things. They had a list of things that you could do, and then you have to do a report each year showing what you spent the money on. So, my agency where I was at the time, we used to have a weight room that. So I worked in Clayton for a long time, and then I left and did some work in other agencies, and then I returned to Clayton. And the weight room that used to be there that we used to use sometimes was gone, and it had become just a record storage room, and it had just boxes and boxes of records. And so I reached out to our police officers association and I said, hey, we have this grant money. Um, Obviously, I can choose what to spend it on, but if I spend it on what I think is best for everyone and they don't buy into that, then we just wasted, in our case, it was $15,000.
Mhm.
So I wanted to make sure it was going to be something that was beneficial to everyone and that they actually had buy-in on and wanted to use. So that was their thing was we want to be able to exercise and work out. And so they initially gave me an idea of some things that they wanted, and I thought that that was a unanimous, this is what we agreed on. Maybe not unanimous, but majority is what we agreed on.
Yeah.
So went ahead and ordered all this equipment, and then I had a few people come in and say, hey, why did we get this stuff out of curiosity? So, well, I was told that's what you guys wanted. Well, that's not what we wanted. And so I thought, we spent all this money and we don't have the money now. And if people aren't going to use it, for the longest time, the equipment was just sitting in a corner in an office. And I thought, this is terrible. This is the exact opposite of what this was meant to do. So
Mhm.
I went back to the association. I said, listen, apparently this isn't what you guys wanted. That was what was conveyed to me, but it's my bad for not checking with everybody. Let's circle back around. Let's find out what you guys really want to do. And then we'll see if we can return this equipment and get credit or money back so that we can get what you want. So at that point, they said, we really want this weight room back. It was nice when it was down there. Don't know why they got rid of the equipment. It was old, but it was still useful. So that became our priority. So we had to basically what I did was I decided on the flooring. I wanted to make sure it was going to be good rubberized flooring that they can use. So I told them I'm going to pick out the flooring myself and I'll install the flooring. And then I'm going to tell you guys how much money's left. And I want you guys to give me a list of equipment on what you guys decide on. So I went down there, tore the old carpet out, put the new rubber floor in, got it all prepped and ready for them, and then said, okay, now it's time. So they did. They sat down, got together, put together a list of what they wanted, and then we ordered the equipment. I wound up getting the job that I'm at now in Atwater before the equipment was all set up. So I never got to see the finished product of the weight room, but from what I understand, they did get all the equipment in and they put it together. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I got here to Atwater. They had already spent most of their money. What they decided on was to do body scans for everybody.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of young officers, but we have a lot of older command staff and supervisors. And from what I was told, the older people, it was really a wake-up call for some of them. And they got these body scans and had problems that they didn't realize they had. And it kind of freaked some of them out because they thought they were healthy and they weren't quite as healthy as they thought they were. So from stories that I've heard from some of the people that did have some things that were pointed out to them, it really was a life changer to them. And they changed their lifestyle and the way they eat and they exercise more. And they realized that, if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be long in this life and I don't want that. So I think that was a great thing that they did. I wish I would have gotten here before they did it so that I could have had my body scan as well. But there's still some money left. And I heard the same theme here that I heard in Clayton. We want a weight room.
Mhm.
The city has one for the fire department, but it's at the fire station. And the guy said, we don't want to go to the fire station to work out. We want to work out here. So we've identified a room here that actually has good concrete flooring that can hold, weights being dropped or whatever. And we're doing a lot of our finance department was here in the same building as us. They moved out. So we've got the whole footprint now. And so we're kind of shuffling people around into offices to spread out and utilize all of our space. And our current report writing room is the perfect room for the weight room. So as soon as we get the report writing furniture and computers and everything moved out of there, then I'm going to go back and do the same thing I did in Clayton and have them price out what they want, and we'll make it happen. Because they use most of the grant on the scans, we're not going to have as much money to do weights, so I'm going to have to use some general fund money to get some weights as well. But it's to me, it's very vital to have that, especially when that's what they're telling me they want.
Yeah.
Um, I think if we get the equipment, they'll use it, and that's really what I want to do.
Yeah, I think it's important to identify like what is the goal. And if the goal is to put in place programming and equipment and resources that are going to help people, then it's important that people use them.
Yes.
Because if no one's using it, it's not benefiting anybody. And so it sounds to me like what you did at your previous agency was, getting that ownership and that buy-in through saying like, hey, like we're not going to make everybody happy, but can we come to a majority consensus that these are the things that you would like to see? And then how can we figure that out within our funds available, within our space? And then by doing that, they had excitement because it felt like they had some ownership over it. They were like, Chief listened to us, this is what we wanted, and kind of giving us permission to run with it and to pick out the things we want. And then that translated now into your existing agency of taking the same concept of saying, what do you guys want? Okay, how can we make it happen? And so I, I would imagine that the goal and the hope is that once that space is built up, that there's already the buy-in, people are already excited, and so they're going to use it, which is going to get to the end goal of actually benefiting them.
Yes, definitely. I
I,
don't know how many of them actually work out now, with gym memberships or whatever, but I think we'll get a lot more use out of this than having to go to a gym or do whatever else that they do.
well, I think it's also like, how can we remove barriers. And we know that you guys are busy. We know that shift work is hard. We know that you're juggling a lot of hats and you have a home life and a work life. And so, if you can make that easier, where maybe they can come in a little bit early, maybe they can stay a little bit late, and it's right there ready for them, and it's not an extra thing to have to drive to the gym, or
Right.
it's not an extra financial burden to pay for a gym membership because you have something that is on site. I think that that encourages usage even more. I mean, I would think that that's the hope, is that you're removing barriers and hurdles for people who maybe don't work out. Maybe that is a part of the objection, is that they don't have the money for it because gym memberships are expensive, or they don't have the time because they don't want to spend an extra 2 hours out of their day driving to and from the gym. So I think that it just makes it so much easier to use.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you find that there is a general pushback just for wellness as a whole? Like, do you hear that it's time? Do you hear that it's money? Do you like what are you hearing as far as like pushback to buy in?
Haven't really heard any pushback. And I know, like I said, we have a lot of younger people now. And I do think when we're younger, we're more in tune with that. We want to take care of ourselves. We want to be healthy. Once you settle down, you have kids, and for all your priorities in the world change, it's no longer about you. It's about your kids and your family. Those kind of things seem to be put on the back burner. And so I don't know if that's really an excuse. It's just a way of life.
Mm,
But I think with the younger people, they really are more in tune with that, and they do want to take better care of themselves. Hopefully they just are able to find a way to carry that on as they get older.
yeah, it's interesting. I find this like dynamic between the really young guys and girls, and then like the most senior. I feel like there's like a middle ground. So like the really young ones are more open to it, but they might not necessarily think that they need it yet because they feel really good. You know, they're like, we're fit, we're good, we're not injured, maybe haven't experienced a lot of trauma or, things on the job yet. And then you have the really, really senior who are like, man, my back really hurts. Or like I've had like a shoulder surgery and like, or, man, I've seen 20 plus years of things and, on the street and stress. And I really feel like now I need some resources. And then I think to your point, you kind of have that middle ground of like life where it's like hard to keep up.
Yeah, you get off work and you got to take your son to baseball or your daughter to dance, and those things are obviously they're more important than taking care of yourself, but you have to find a way to do both.
Yeah, I think it's prioritization of time, and time is something that's so valuable, and there's not enough of it, it seems like, when balancing things out. I had to, for myself, and I don't know if this is helpful for anybody else, but I had to really evaluate my schedule because I told myself that midday is the time that I'm gonna go to the gym or I'm going to do something wellness oriented. And realized pretty quickly that like midday is the busiest time of my day for my business, right? And so I was always canceling. I was always filling that time with meetings and other things that I had to do. And then I got really honest with myself and said, "Am I going to do it after a 15-hour day?" No, I'm not. Some people can. Some people do. Some people are like, that's my way of like leaving it all out on the mat. And for me, I was like, it's not going to happen. I'm so tired. I'm hungry. I just want to eat. And then after I eat, I'm even more tired. And I just, I don't, it's not going to happen. Midday is obviously not going to happen either because I'm so busy with work. And so for me, I had to say, okay, the best time is super early. And I am not a morning person. I will tell everyone this. I'm not a monster, but I'm a snoozer. When that alarm goes off, I am not someone who's like up and at 'em. Like it takes me a minute. And so I had to really train myself to be more disciplined and to say, okay, and I started slow. I said, okay, 2 times a week, I'm going to go to the gym and I work out with a trainer now at 5:15 in the morning, 2 times a week. And that was like my way of getting that consistency. And then because I was used to that, I was able to add more things to that. But I tried to first start with what can I do that's realistic and how can I do it in a way that I can have longevity and not burn out. And that worked for me. So I've been able to build on that, but it took time because it's like how do you manage that? How do you make them non-negotiables and how do you fit it into your schedule?
And you're right, if you bite off more than you can chew, then it's going to be easy to just say, I don't have time for this anymore and drop it all together. And so it's important to not overdo it.
Yeah. And I think we tend to do that, right? Like you get really motivated, you get really excited, like maybe you did some sort of training, at the department or you took um maybe you took time off and went to like a conference. I always feel like really rejuvenated after a conference where I'm like, yes, I'm going to do everything. And then you realize pretty quickly that it's not realistic to take on everything at once. It's like, you've heard the expression like the best way to eat an elephant?
Yeah.
Right? It's like
I
one
did
bite
it.
at a time. It's like, how can we like start small and then build on that? And then you'll eventually find like that perfect system that works for you. And, as I get older, I also realize that like my training methods look different than they used to. I had someone recently, they're like, you've done yoga for 15 years. Can you do all these really hard things? And I'm like, yeah, I used to. Like, I used to do that when I was in my 20s, not so much anymore, like now I'm just trying to maintain, like I'm just trying to like keep my mobility and my stability in like a really good level so that I can have longevity as I get older. And so I think things change too, and you have to be willing to understand that maybe you going and hitting it really, really hard 7 days a week at the gym is not sustainable. Maybe incorporating some mobility to that routine, so that you're not all bulk and no movement, is something that's going to help you create that longevity. Or maybe you are a little bit further in your career and you've seen a lot of stuff. And so it's more of that stress management and, how can you offload some of those things? So I think having the ability to adapt your processes over time is important.
It's funny you say the eating the elephant thing. Our very first day in the police academy, the director, that was his advice to us. He
Really?
says, look at the schedule of your, I went to an extended academy, it was 9 months long. He says, if you sit there and you look at the schedule, it's going to be overwhelming. And he said, but just come in here every day and take one bite at a time and you'll get through it. And it worked.
Yeah. I also think it's kind of a process of being present and mindful in like what you're doing day to day too. Because I do think that it's easy to get overwhelmed if you are looking at everything. So how can you like kind of tune in? And I think that I've done that a little bit to my detriment, to be honest, because I get so involved in the day to day that I forget to look up and like zoom out and like see the bigger picture sometimes. And so I think everything in balance, but I do think if I were to look at my calendar for even just the week, I can't deal with it. I can't do it. But if I can look at it today and say these are the things that I have like right now, this is what I have today. You can even zoom in further. This is what I have in the next 10 minutes, hour.
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit less daunting and stressful for sure. And that's the goal, right? Like how can we reduce our stress as much as possible? So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I know that you are looking forward to retirement. We talked about this a little bit. You've been in this career a long time. What does that look like for you? How are you preparing for that?
Well, now that I live on a golf course, when we first moved in, we got a 3 years membership at the golf course, and I was out there probably 4 or 5 times a week. I would come home from work in the summer when it was still light out enough and go out and play until I couldn't see the ball anymore, and then I would stop. So I look forward to being able to join the men's club and go out and golf in retirement. Um, I look forward to being able to spend more time. My mom lives about 2.5 hours from me, and my children, they all live in the same area. Look forward to being able to spend more time, in the middle of the week. I can just on a Tuesday go out there and spend time and have lunch and do whatever. I take my mom to all her doctor's appointments, so it'll be a lot easier when I'm retired to not have to work that around my work schedule. But then on the other side of that, and I think about this all the time, the closer I get to retirement, am I really ready to be retired? Because I consider myself still young, and most people my age still have, another 10 or 15 years worth of work before they can retire and get Social Security. So it's that balance of knowing when is the right time, not retiring too soon. I do know people that have retired too soon, and then they have to go find something else to do because they don't want to be retired. So I guess hopefully I'll know when the right time comes, but I'm really enjoying this department. It's a little bigger than what I had before, and so we have a lot more moving parts, and I really like coming to work every day. And I think that's important. And so I think as long as I enjoy coming to work every day and my health is still good, that I'll keep pushing retirement down the road a little bit. But
Yeah.
every Monday morning when the alarm goes off, I do look forward to retiring.
I think, it's interesting because when you start to reach like milestone moments in your life of like, okay, what is the next step?
Mhm.
I think there's always a little bit of fear,
Yeah.
of like, what is next? Like I've reached points in my life where, I've had that question of like, do I start a family? And there's fear with that because I'm like, wait, like I really enjoy my life right now. What does that next chapter look like? Am I prepared for that? And if I'm still questioning if I'm prepared for it, does that mean that I'm not prepared for it and that it's not the time? But I'm also 35. So, you have like these
Yeah.
these question marks. And so I would imagine it's very similar in the sense of retirement of like, man, like, am I ready for this? When's the right time? And I feel really good right now. So should I wait a little bit? And what does that look like? And so I think, but that I think is also like the exciting part of life is that there are these different chapters and different seasons in our life. And um, I'm curious if there's any advice that you would have for anyone who's maybe earlier in their career to be able to prepare for the next chapter, whether that's preparing for promotions, preparing for leadership. How do you set yourself up for success proactively so that you are ready for those next seasons in life?
I worked when I was younger, I worked in a generation where we threw ourselves into our work, and work became what you did. And you worked as much overtime as was available, and you just that's what you did. And so that was kind of how you climbed the ladder and worked your way up. I think it's different now, and I think the next generation really does have their priorities a little more in line with how it should be. They take more time off. They're more into doing things with their friends and family and not letting work be the driving force of what they do. So my advice to them would be get that work-life balance. Find what works for you and stick with it because your family suffers if you're always at work. Your kids suffer if you're never at their games or anything like that. And I worked nights for years just so I could be available and go to my kids' games and do all that. But that takes its toll on you after a while too. You can't work nights forever; it'll destroy you. And my other big piece of advice to people is when you're young, you can eat basically whatever you want. You can work out if you want. You can not work out, and you're still in great shape. That starts changing really quick, and you don't even see it until it's too late. So make sure you take good care of yourself. Make sure you get sleep. Make sure you eat well. Make sure you exercise in whatever way you enjoy doing. In my life now, I don't spend much time working out, but I swim a lot. I golf as much as I can, and to me, that's my exercise. But had I gone back and maintained what I was doing, from my 20s onward, I'd probably still be in really good shape. I see people on TV that are my age and think, man, I could never get myself back to that. And so it's unfortunate. I know I probably could, but it would take a heck of a lot of work. So if you just maintain it and do what you're doing and keep doing it, just like they say when you're pregnant, if you keep doing what you're doing in your daily life, your pregnancy is going to go a lot easier. Your delivery will be a lot easier rather than sitting on the couch and doing nothing until it's time to deliver. So I think that's a good piece of advice for anybody in life is just maintain activity and maintain wellness um, as you get older, and it'll be a lot easier to go through your golden years.
Yeah. I heard the expression, it's easier to stay fit than to get fit.
Absolutely.
And so I think for anyone who's younger to kind of take that to heart, like you said, if you can maintain that throughout your life, it's a whole lot easier than having to backtrack. And, all of us, maybe not all of us who are listening, but I would say a lot of us who are listening to this, we have experience with having to backtrack. And it is so much harder to get back to where you used to be rather than trying to maintain what you are. So I think that that's really solid advice. And if anyone has reached the point where maybe they're, you know, a little bit thicker than they used to be, or a little less mobile, or a little less fit, to your point of what you said earlier, it's never too late to start. Of course, it's going to be harder. But I think that not feeling like you're stuck, like there's always room for improvement. You can always get yourself back on track, but it just might take a little extra effort. So for the young ones listening, learn from us. Try to maintain that over time. I really like that. I wanted to ask you, looking back at the last 20 plus years of your career, what are you most proud of?
Career wise or just life wise in general?
Anything.
My proudest thing in my life is my kids. I love my kids to death, and my son's 32 now, and my daughter's 29. So they're not really kids anymore, but they'll always be my kids.
Yeah.
When I see them and what they've achieved in life, it makes me feel really proud. I did spend a lot of their not childhood, but well, yeah, a lot of their childhood, I was a single father, and so that's not always easy to do. It's kind of hard to be the mother and the father together, but I wouldn't have it any other way because I think it made us closer, and so they're my proudest achievement. I've become a police chief, and that's something that I never thought because I started later in life. I didn't think it would happen. I figured, when I got promoted to sergeant, I thought, okay, maybe someday I'll be a lieutenant or something, but if I retire as a sergeant, that's fine. I achieved some kind of career milestone. But then I realized, no, I want to do this. I'm going to go back to college. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to do everything I can to try to become a police chief. And I did. And so that is a big accomplishment. I'm losing one of my sergeants now. He just got a job as a chief at another agency. And we had a conversation the other day. And I told him, he's a little nervous and not sure how it's going to go. And he's never obviously been a chief before. And I told him, regardless of what happens, you'll have been a police chief in the state of California, and no one can ever take that away from you. So be proud of that.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a milestone that I'm proud of, but it pales in comparison to how proud I am of the work I did as a father and how my kids turned out.
And I really commend you for that. I was raised by a single stepfather, and so I understand from, obviously the child's perspective, the challenges of being a single dad and what that looks like. And, we always celebrated Mother's Day and Father's Day in our household with him. And so I know that that's challenging, but I do agree with you. I think that, my stepdad's my best friend. Like we talk every day. Probably more than he wants to talk to me, to be honest. Like I'm the one initiating that always. But I know that that's challenging on both ends of things. And so I can tell how proud you are of that achievement because it is an achievement. And then of course being chief of police is an achievement as well. And um, I I think that, in life, you never know where you're going to go. You never know where life is going to lead you. And so to me, like hearing the entirety of your story of you like looking up and looking around and saying, you know what, like I have these big aspirations for myself and it's not too late to start. And so I'm gonna do whatever I need to do, even if that's putting myself through this. And then the trajectory of your career over time, and then you looking up once again and saying, no, I want to be a police chief and I'm going to do whatever I need to do that, all while still raising a family on your own, I think is something to strive for. And so, anyone who's listening, like we said before, it's never too late to start.
That's
And
right.
the journey might be difficult, but it's worth it.
It definitely is. And back to that elephant, one bite at a time, and you'll get there.
100%. My final question, and I think you answered this already, but I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't ask the question, and you can answer it however you want, even if it's repetitive. But what words in the context of wellness, what words of advice would you give to someone who's earlier in their career, maybe something you wish you would have known?
Um, People always thought of it as a weakness or a bad stigma to show vulnerability, especially police officers. We're supposed to be stoic and we're supposed to be the ones that are heroes to everyone, and we're not supposed to have our own problems. But we're humans like everybody else, and we all do have our problems. And so I think it's important for the younger officers and the older officers to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have issues that you need to talk to someone about or work through, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with saying I have a problem or I'm struggling with this and can you help me or do you have any advice or where should I go for this? And back, in the day, nobody would ever do that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much. Did I miss anything? Do you want to add anything? Because that's all I have for you.
No, I don't think so. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad that you reached out and asked if I'd be interested in doing this, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. I did as well. I appreciate your time very much.
Thanks, Paige.